Wolverhampton Wanderers hosting Bournemouth this midweek at Molineux. Another home game, the second of 3 consecutive home games before we face off against Luton on Saturday. As always, giving my thoughts, the latest team news, and we will have the away perspective as well later on in the video. Interesting today because we have had Gary O'Neill's pre-match press conference. I was intrigued to see what was said, and there were a few reports and rumours this morning about his future and potentially having talks with Liverpool, which I've done a very, very quick video on if you want to go check that out. But no questions about that asked as such. Just very sort of general questions asked about the situation on the team and so on, and the latest team news. Much better team news, I suppose, for this game rather than the Arsenal game, where we know it was a very, very difficult situation for Wolves, but they put up a fight, they held their own, and it wasn't a bad result considering. Obviously, defeat's a defeat, but could have been a lot heavier considering what had happened. But some good news: Ryan Aït-Nouri is fit to start, as is Mario Lemina and Pablo Sarabia for tomorrow's game against Bournemouth. So big boosts for Wolves in that department. And also a couple of the players that could make the lineup. Going to be late fitness tests on these 3 tomorrow. But not Mario Lemina, Nelson Semedo, Mateus Cunha, and possibly even Jean-Ric Bellegarde could all be involved tomorrow. I would suppose, and I would say that if they're not ready for tomorrow, they should definitely be ready for Saturday's game against Luton. So hopefully, as long as we come out of this one tomorrow against Bournemouth unscathed, we should have a really, really solid team going into the final 4 games of the campaign as well. Neto still out, as is Craig Dawson, obviously, as well. But I'm hoping for a strong team. Bournemouth have been a good side so far this season. Had a slow start under Iraola, but really picked it up recently. Dominic Solanke scoring plenty of goals this campaign. And be interesting. I think there's a good game. We played them, in a slightly different state to what they were in at the start of the season. Wolves getting that late win. If you remember, Sasha Kalajdzic actually scoring the winning goal. And it'd be nice, if it's been a while since Wolves actually won a game. It was the home game against Fulham. That was before the Coventry game, so it's some time ago. So really hoping that we can get another win on the board and hopefully go and grab another positive result as well on Saturday against Luton. Predicted lineup for this one, quite tricky to say exactly, but I reckon, I'm going to go with something like this. I'm going to say Jose Sarr starting in goal. I think he might go with possibly Ryan Aït-Nouri back at left wing back, Doherty at right wing back to start, with Totti, Kilman and Santi Bueno keeping their place. Lemina back in the middle, I think, alongside possibly Tommy Doyle. I think João Gomez could be rested for this one, to be fair. And maybe even Boubacar Traoré as a midfield 3. And then with Hwang and Sarabia up top. But it may well be a little bit different. Play Aït-Nouri as a front 3, go to a middle 2. I don't know. But Boubacar played quite well. Just to try and mix things up and freshen things up. And then, we'll see, obviously, a lot of quality, going, on the bench available to come on. We'll move on now to the opposition perspective. We speak to Craig from Up the Cherries in all departments to get his thoughts on the Bournemouth season so far, what he's thinking about Gary O'Neill's time at Wolves, and what we can expect from the Cherries at Molineux on Wednesday. So then, guys, for the opposition perspective, we've got Craig once again from Up the Cherries in all departments to give us the Bournemouth perspective ahead of this Wednesday's game. Craig, thanks for jumping back on Talking Wolves. How you keeping, mate?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Dave. All good. How about yourself?
Yeah, all good, thank you, all good. Look, things have changed quite a bit since we last spoke. I know we sort of kept in touch between now and the last game as well, but Bournemouth sat in 13th place in the league, only 1 point actually behind Wolves, so
Yeah.
extremely close in terms of league position right now. I'll ask you really to give us a quick summary of what you're thinking of the season so far. I know when we last spoke, you weren't 100% convinced by the manager. I'd assume your opinion has changed very slightly now because things have sort of started to look up for Bournemouth and started scoring goals and winning a lot more football matches.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest, Dave. Made a statement after that game, and I said, "Look, Iriola's got to go." And mentioned Jesse Marsh. I thought, well, who's the best person to get some results on the board? We hadn't won at that point, and I thought, well, Jesse Marsh makes sense. Of course, we've got Tyler Adams, Sinistera. He wanted Max Aarons as well. I believe at Leeds. So the thing was it made sense. But Iriola has really turned it round, and I tell you how he's turned it round. Is beforehand we was playing a lot of possession-based football. It was that high press, but he went a little bit more direct
Mm.
afterwards. Just felt like we was moving the ball up the pitch a lot quicker. There was no impetus on keeping hold of the ball, and that's worked. And I think by changing and adapting his style, he's shown what a good manager he is. Um, I got to be honest, I was very, very, very concerned, especially after the game against yourselves at Dean Court, as you well rightly know. I even mentioned, didn't I, to you, and I was like, that was terrible. That was awful today. But yeah, he has turned the corner, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, look, fantastic job, and he got players like Dominic Solanke, who's been in fantastic form so far this season for Bournemouth as well. I'll ask you. I mean, we very quickly mentioned it beforehand.
Yeah,
Gary O'Neill. Um, I know again you sort of appreciative of the work that he'd done for Bournemouth last year, and I know you've done us a clip saying how good of a manager he was, and I think he's proved
yeah.
to the rest of the Premier League, with how well Wolves have performed considering the circumstances as well. Do you think now, in hindsight, it was the right decision for Bournemouth, or I suppose, both clubs have sort of, Gary's gone one way and done quite well. Bournemouth have gone another way and, ultimately it's proved out to be working okay. Do you think long term it was the right decision for Bournemouth to lose Gary O'Neill?
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult one still for me. As much as I think Iriola, and I'll put it in this way: the football under Iriola is a lot more attractive. It's a lot better to watch. It's more exciting. Whereas Gary O'Neill, sometimes we won, and it was grim, but it was effective. The
Yeah,
football.
yeah, yeah,
I do sometimes think, though, if Gary O'Neill was still here with the players at our disposal this season, I think, hand on heart, I think we could well be a little bit higher than we are. Um, and I think what he's done at Wolves is absolutely fantastic because everybody predicted that you were going to go down at the start of the season because of the players that you'd lost. Of course, Lopetegui left you in it, and what he did was he a bit like when we've been beaten 9-0, and you probably can remember that nil. Well, you probably can't remember because it was a bit of a drab game, but the 0-0 draw at
yeah,
Dean
yeah.
Dean Court, and it was the perfect result after a 9-0 thrashing. And the reason being was it was a reset, something to build upon, and that's what he's done at Wolves. Is that I'm sure there was lots of concerns within the fan base. Firstly, Lopetegui going so close to the start of the season, but also Gary coming in. What he did really is a bit of a reset and built upon that, and he's found his footing at Wolves. And I know that he's been linked with Liverpool. There's been a lot of talk about that, and I think rightly so. He probably has been linked with the big clubs because he is a good manager. But I really hope he doesn't go to Liverpool. I want him to stay at Wolves because the thing is if he goes to Liverpool, that expectation again increases. Whereas staying at Wolves makes more sense for his development, and he's got something good going at Wolves. You're not going to sack him. You're not going to do what we did. There was, and to be honest, I completely dumbfounded by some of our fan base. There was a lot of teacher clown comments, even worse, aimed towards Gary O'Neill when he was here. Completely unfair, and he's proved everybody wrong. and he's shown what a good manager he is, and he's got a great future in the game. Could he be an England manager? I wouldn't put it past him.
I think, yeah, I'd be interested. Obviously, there's been speculation, like you alluded to then, and be interesting to see, this summer because Wolves are said to have or hoping to open contract talks with him, but we've got to wait until the end of the
Mhm.
season for that. So I think that could end the speculation as long as that's done sooner rather than later. But you would assume at the end of the season they'll sit down with him and sort of put forward their plan. But I suppose if Wolves don't back him, I think he could walk out and he would have jobs at clubs of either a similar stature or even bigger. I think it would be a risk for some of the bigger clubs, but I do agree with you. I think staying at Wolves as long as he's backed could really help
Yeah.
him in his career. Bearing in mind, 2 years as a head coach manager now, first one at Bournemouth under so much pressure. I think I probably mentioned to you last time. Not a lot of people would have backed Bournemouth to stay up, and he did that fairly comfortably.
Yeah.
Joins Wolves again with no preseason. Not a lot of people would have backed them to stay up, and again we stayed up very comfortably. So I do wonder what life would be like under Gary O'Neill if he has a pre-season behind him, Craig, because actually putting some groundwork in for him to have a pre-season with a club would be interesting. So I really do hope Wolves back him. So let's wait and see. But it'd be an intriguing battle. Areola as well with another successful maybe full season at Bournemouth next year. Be
Yeah.
interesting to see where both clubs are at. Looking at your recent results, obviously things have improved a lot. Haven't won in
Mhm.
your last three, but certainly picked up some decent results beforehand. Um, Looking between now and the end of the season, is it just to aim as high as possible? I think relegation's obviously out of the question. Europe's probably, it probably is a stretch too far. Is it just to maybe try and creep into the top half, maybe, or?
Yeah, I think that has got to be the aim. A top half finish would be a fantastic season from my perspective. If we can have a good end to the season, and win the remaining games, fantastic. A fantastic end to the season. And we're capable of doing that. We're capable of doing that this season with the squad we've got, with the way we have been playing. Um, and personally, I think Iriola also has a very, very good future, in the Premier League in this country, which I didn't think initially. I thought that his style, when I made my criticism of him, it wasn't so much because of, I knew he had an idea of what he was doing, but there's a certain way of playing in Spain and there's a certain way of playing in the Premier League. And I just didn't feel, especially after that Everton game where we got beat 3-0 at Goodison, that I just didn't feel that he had it in him to actually keep the club in the Premier League. But he should prove me wrong, and I think he's got a great future. I think his main aim has got to be to have a strong finish. We can, get some victories towards the end of the season, finish in that top half. Europe is out the equation. We are safe now mathematically. So yeah, I think that would constitute a good season. I don't want to do, in fact, and I have said this before, I don't want to really go into Europe this season. I know that might sound crazy, but of course, at Wolves, you had that where you went into Europe and there was a bit of a dip the following season because you was concentrating on European football. The side was a bit stretched. I think we would be exactly the same at the moment. So give it a couple of years and then maybe we could go for it. And to be honest, at that point, I'll have to pinch myself that I'm going to the back end of Moldova.
To be fair, the year we were actually in Europe, we did quite well. I don't know how
Mm,
we managed it, but with the consistency. But unfortunately, it was a COVID year, so the year after that, we had a real bad hangover because we finished the
yeah.
season a lot later than everyone else. But I think you are right. I think, especially under a new manager, you almost want another season, get the foundations down. And I think Bournemouth have. There's a lot of football teams at the moment, sort of in and around that sort of middle six, middle seven
Yeah.
teams that could really surprise a few people. Either way, slide down the table or climb up the table. And with Bournemouth, it'll be interesting with new backing and so on. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Craig, looking at some of the players, you've had some players really stand out, like I mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
Solanke's really kicked on. Is there anyone else that we need to be looking out for at Molineux on Wednesday?
Well, I've got my fingers and toes crossed that he'll be back. Semenyo has been outstanding this
Mm.
season. He's been very, very good, very quick. He was one player that when we signed him from Bristol City, I thought, well, he blows a little bit hot and cold for them. But he's been consistent here. Iriola's got the very, very best out of him. So he is a player, if he plays, that you do need to keep your eye on. Justin Clivert has been excellent. And Milos Kerkez as well. He's a left back by trade, but he did play a little bit more in an advanced position because of the amount of injuries we've had. So he's one to look out for. And then at the back, I would say Zabanier is a player that we can only really enjoy him for a period of time. He's one of those players that he's going to be snapped up by a big club. We can't help it. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at a Manchester City or a Real Madrid or someone like that, and goes on to have an absolutely unbelievable career because he is that good. Against Crystal Palace recently, Eze was running through, and Zabania had no divine right to make the tackle he did, but he made it pinpoint perfect. Most defenders in that situation would have probably seen red, or Eze would have got away from them. But Zabania, pinpoint perfect, fantastic tackle, and he is somebody with a real good future ahead of him.
Yeah, I think with some of the players, I mean, Bournemouth have really kicked on. It will be interesting. I think Wolves are in a similar situation where we've had certain real key standout players. Obviously, Neto earlier on in the season. We've got João Gomez, Ait Nouri.
Yeah,
And I think it'll be interesting to see even Solanke. I mean, I've not seen much news and rumours of him yet, but I would suppose with him being English as well, Bournemouth can, demand a really decent fee for him.
yeah,
But no, it's good. It's good to see two teams, kicking on, both mathematically safe. So hopefully we can enjoy the game a little bit more
yes.
this week, Craig. Score predictions. What are you thinking ahead of this one?
I'm not going to go against my own team. I'm going to reverse
Hmm.
this score at Dean Court.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a 2-1 win at Molineux. It's going to be tough. Gary knows these players. He knows how we're going to play. And I was lucky enough to meet him when he was down here. He's a very scenario based manager as well. If we do something, he will no doubt have a situation that Wolves can actually combat that. I'm just hoping Iriola is aware of that and can manage to get one better on Gary. If he hasn't been, working on something new, Wolves could well walk away with the 3 points. But, I'm not going to bet against my own team, Dave. And, hopefully, fingers crossed, we can
Yeah.
get a little bit of revenge on Gary. Not that I really want revenge on Gary, because honestly, a lovely guy. And I really do wish him and Wolves the very, very best.
No, I appreciate that, mate. Craig, it's going to be may the best team win, but yeah, all the best for the rest of the season. Where can people
Likewise,
find
mate.
you and your content if they wish?
So the channel is called Up the Cherries in All Departments. If you type in UTCIAD onto YouTube, you will be able to find us. We've had lots and lots of interviews. Johnny Phillips come on for our preview this time round, but we've also had Harry on numerous times. Also, Richie Neville from Five. So, if there's any Five fans in the Wolves fan base, unfortunately, he is an Aston Villa fan. But we've also had Gaz Whelan from Happy Mondays, and also Damon Minchella come back on from Ocean Colour Scene. So, yeah, come check us out, and it's a good laugh. So, yeah, come and have a chat with us.
Brilliant, mate. I'll make sure I leave a link to it in the description anyway, Craig. All the best, like I said earlier, for the rest of the season. I'm sure I'll catch you next season as well, mate.
Yeah, likewise, mate. All the very, very best to Wolves, and thanks for having me.
Cheers. So big thanks to Craig. I'll make sure I leave a link to him in the description down below in his channel if you want to go and check that one out. Lots of content over on there. I'm going to sort of say the reverse of what he said. I think we're going to stay same result as last time, a 2-1 Wolves win. It'd be great to get 3 points, and I just feel it could be a successful night under the lights at Molineux. It'd be lovely to get 3 points again. As always, though, guys, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Enjoy the rest of your week. Fingers crossed it's 3 points for the Wolves, and I'll see you next time.